20. Most hated gospel legends. What if we told you that some of gospel music's biggest legends weren't just praised, but publicly ridiculed, shunned, or even canceled? From shocking scandals to boundary-pushing performances, these gospel icons faced backlash not for their lack of faith, but for how they chose to express it. Some broke sacred rules, others broke hearts, and all of them stirred controversy that still sparks debate today. Get ready to uncover the untold truths behind the 20 most hated figures in gospel history. Hit that like button, subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence, and let's dive into the drama behind the praise. Marvin Sapp. Marvin Sapp's story in gospel music is one of extraordinary influence, shadowed by personal loss and public judgment. Born in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Sapp rose to fame as a member of the group Commissioned before launching a solo career that would redefine contemporary gospel. His 2007 anthem, Never Would Have Made It, written in response to the passing of his father, became a spiritual anthem and the longest-running #1 gospel single in Billboard history, staying at the top for 43 weeks. Yet, even as he comforted millions through his music, Sapp found himself at the center of a storm following the tragic death of his wife, Dr. Melinda Sapp, in 2010. A respected educational leader and co-pastor, Melinda's battle with colon cancer left Marvin as a single father to 3 children. His grieving process was public, heartfelt, and drew sympathy until he remarried in 2013. The new union, just under 3 years after his wife's passing, sparked a wave of criticism from conservative churchgoers and gospel traditionalists who felt he had not mourned long enough. Accusations emerged, claiming he had dishonored his late wife's memory. Others questioned whether his remarriage had begun too soon after her death. Sapp responded firmly, saying he had sought spiritual guidance before moving forward and emphasized that grief is deeply personal. He explained that his new wife brought love and support to his family when they needed it most. Despite the scrutiny, Marvin Sapp never abandoned his calling. He continued preaching, recording, and mentoring. His church, the Chosen Vessel Cathedral in Fort Worth, Texas, stands as a testament to his ongoing ministry. His journey reveals the cost of leadership in faith communities where even healing can provoke hostility and moving on can be mistaken for betrayal. Kirk Franklin. Kirk Franklin has long stood at the intersection of praise and provocation, bursting onto the scene in 1993 with Why We Sing. He didn't just make gospel music popular, he redefined it. Born in Fort Worth, Texas, Franklin was raised by his aunt and discovered music early, becoming a church pianist by age 12. Yet what made him famous wasn't tradition. It was his fearless integration of hip-hop, R&B, and urban beats into worship, creating a sound that spoke to a younger, often disenchanted generation. His collaborations with artists like Kanye West, Chance the Rapper, and Mary J. Blige raised eyebrows among church elders who felt sacred music had no place on secular stages. Albums such as The New Nation Project and Losing My Religion pushed boundaries both musically and theologically. While younger fans celebrated his raw honesty and modern appeal, some religious leaders called his style worldly and accused him of diluting the gospel's spiritual weight. Controversy also followed Franklin into the realm of public discourse. His willingness to confront the church's failures, particularly around issues like homophobia, hypocrisy, and mental health, earned both praise and condemnation. He notably clashed with fellow gospel artist Kim Burrell after her 2016 anti-LGBTQ+ sermon, choosing to distance himself from her, a move that led some to accuse him of disloyalty to longtime collaborators. Yet Franklin has remained unapologetically bold. He's spoken openly about surviving childhood abuse, estrangement from his biological parents, and his past addiction to pornography, topics most gospel artists avoid. Through his vulnerability, he's made gospel music feel human, not just holy. For every hymn he's modernized and every taboo he's touched, Kirk Franklin has paid a price. But his resilience has proven that sometimes the most hated voices are the ones forcing the conversation that needs to happen. Kim Burrell. Kim Burrell's name was once synonymous with vocal excellence in gospel music. Born in Houston, Texas, she rose to prominence in the 1990s with her soulful, jazz-infused approach to gospel singing. Her debut album, Try Me Again, set her apart as a virtuoso, and by the early 2000s, she had collaborated with top-tier artists across genres, including R. Kelly, Stevie Wonder, and Kirk Franklin. Her tone control and improvisational skill made her a sought-after performer and a mentor to younger singers. However, her career took a sharp downturn in 2016 after a sermon at her church went viral. In it, Burrell made inflammatory statements about homosexuality, referring to it as a perverted spirit and warning of divine judgment for LGBTQ+ individuals. The backlash was immediate and intense. She was swiftly disinvited from a scheduled performance on The Ellen DeGeneres Show, and her collaboration with Pharrell Williams on the Hidden Figures soundtrack was severed. Major media outlets, artists, and advocacy groups condemned her rhetoric as hateful and dangerous. Even within the gospel community, reactions were split. Kirk Franklin, a previous collaborator, publicly disagreed with her message while stopping short of ending their professional relationship. Gospel radio stations quietly removed her tracks from rotation, and churches that once welcomed her rescinded invitations. Burrell initially doubled down, calling her words scriptural truth. Later, she claimed her remarks had been misunderstood and misrepresented. Yet the damage to her mainstream appeal was profound. While she retains a loyal audience among conservative churchgoers, her presence in broader gospel culture has diminished. Despite her undeniable talent, Kim Burrell's legacy remains tainted by controversy. She stands as a symbol of the sharp divide between traditional doctrine and a rapidly evolving cultural landscape. An artist celebrated for her gift, but remembered just as much for her words. Juanita Bynum was once one of the most commanding figures in Pentecostal preaching and gospel ministry. Known for her gripping sermons, books, and music, she achieved national recognition in the early 2000s with her sermon series, No More Sheets, which addressed issues of sexual purity and emotional healing for women. Her raw, confessional style resonated deeply with audiences, especially Black women seeking spiritual restoration. But her meteoric rise began to falter in 2007 after a brutal domestic violence incident involving her then-husband, Bishop Thomas Weeks III. The assault took place in a public Atlanta hotel parking lot and left Bynum hospitalized. As media coverage exploded, the couple's personal struggles became national headlines. Their divorce was messy, accompanied by countersuits and the collapse of their shared ministry. The scandal fractured her public image, especially as her messages of marital virtue and holiness clashed with her private reality. Subsequent controversies only added fuel to the fire. In 2011, she was briefly detained after allegedly threatening her hairstylist with scissors. Financial troubles, including foreclosure on her $1.1 million Georgia mansion and reports of unpaid bills to ministry vendors, further eroded trust among her followers. Critics accused Bynum of hypocrisy and questioned her stewardship of donor funds. Lavish spending, such as flaunting a $75,000 engagement ring, clashed with her frequent pleas for financial support during sermons and conferences. Though she made multiple attempts to stage a comeback with books, music, and conferences, her credibility never fully recovered. Still, she remains a fixture in certain charismatic circles and continues to tour as a speaker. Juanita Bynum's story is a cautionary tale in modern ministry of what happens when spiritual authority collides with human imperfection and when personal failure becomes a public spectacle. Paul Morton. Paul S. Morton, born in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, became a formidable force in both gospel music and modern Black church leadership. In the 1980s and 90s, he captivated audiences as the frontman of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship Mass Choir, combining traditional preaching with dynamic musical delivery. His baritone voice, passionate performances, and rich scripture-driven lyrics made him a beloved figure among gospel purists. However, as Morton's pastoral responsibilities expanded, he shifted focus from full-time music ministry to church leadership. Consecrated as presiding bishop of the Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship in 1993, he embraced a movement that blended Pentecostal charisma with Baptist structure. Though the organization flourished under his leadership, some gospel fans felt abandoned. Morton, once celebrated for choir-driven anthems like "Let It Rain," was now more associated with sermons than songs. Critics within gospel circles argued that Morton had stepped away from the genre just as it faced increasing pressure from commercial and contemporary forces. Fans lamented the loss of his voice in a time when gospel's sonic identity was shifting. Others accused him of elevating prosperity theology, pointing to his polished image and growing influence in national church politics. Morton, however, never entirely left music. He sporadically released solo projects such as Legacy Live in New Orleans, blending worship and exhortation. In interviews, he defended his transition as divinely guided, emphasizing that leadership and music are not mutually exclusive. Though not scandal-ridden, Morton's legacy is debated. Some see him as a visionary who expanded gospel's reach through institutional reform. Others miss the passionate vocalist they once relied on for Sunday inspiration. In bridging gospel artistry and ecclesiastical authority, Paul Morton walked a narrow road honored by many, but questioned by those who preferred him behind a mic rather than a pulpit. Yolanda Adams. Yolanda Adams, known for her radiant soprano and elegant stage presence, became a symbol of modern gospel's global reach. Hailing from Houston, Texas, she first emerged in the late 1980s with albums like Just As I Am, and solidified her standing with the Grammy-winning Mountain High, Valley Low in 1999. Songs like Open My Heart and The Battle Is the Lord's showcased her ability to blend gospel theology with soulful R&B-flavored melodies. But Adams' crossover success came with its share of backlash. As she graced daytime television award shows and national talk shows, some gospel traditionalists accused her of compromising spiritual purity for commercial gain. Her long-running radio show, The Yolanda Adams Morning Show, 2007 to 2018, often leaned into lifestyle content discussing wellness relationships and pop culture, prompting critics to question if she was veering too far from ministry. Tensions escalated when she performed at non-religious events and collaborated with secular figures like Donnie Wahlberg. While her aim was to inspire beyond church walls, some questioned whether she was softening gospel's core message. Her style, graceful, non-confrontational, and media-savvy, was seen by detractors as lacking the fire and fervor associated with old-school gospel. Yet Adams consistently stood her ground. She asserted that her mission was to minister in every room, not just in sanctuaries. She rejected the idea that faith must be confined to religious spaces, and her albums continued to feature spiritually rich material even when paired with contemporary arrangements. In the eyes of her critics, Yolanda Adams diluted tradition. But to her admirers, she expanded gospel's influence while upholding its message of hope and grace. Her journey illustrates the cost of reaching wider audiences in a genre where authenticity is policed with divine intensity. Donnie McClurkin. Donnie McClurkin, a Grammy-winning gospel powerhouse, is known for timeless hits like Stand and We Fall Down, songs that became spiritual lifelines for millions. Born in Copiague, New York, McClurkin emerged from personal tragedy, childhood abuse, familial loss, and trauma to become a global minister of healing and restoration. His compelling voice and emotive storytelling earned him accolades, international tours, and widespread church support. Yet his candid revelations about his sexuality turned him into one of gospel's most controversial figures. In interviews and sermons over the years, McClurkin has publicly shared that he experienced same-sex attractions and believed he was delivered from homosexuality through prayer. He characterized being gay as a sin and a spiritual struggle, igniting a cultural firestorm. The backlash reached its peak in 2007 when he was invited to perform during Barack Obama's Embrace the Change gospel tour. LGBTQ+ activists protested his inclusion, citing his past statements comparing homosexuality to perversion and spiritual bondage. Although McClurkin performed, the incident left a permanent divide. While traditional Christians rallied behind him, progressive faith communities and gay gospel artists felt deeply hurt. Despite the outcry, McClurkin never retracted his beliefs. He maintained that he spoke only from personal experience, not condemnation. Still, critics argued that his messaging caused harm, particularly to young LGBTQ+ individuals grappling with faith and identity. Musically, McClurkin continued to thrive within conservative circles. His live albums, pastoral work, and frequent church appearances kept him at the center of traditional gospel worship. But his name remains emotionally charged in discussions about sexuality and religion. To some, he is a brave man testifying to God's transformative power. To others, he represents a theology that alienates and wounds. Donnie McClurkin's legacy is not just about music. It's a mirror reflecting gospel's ongoing struggle between redemption and rejection. Ty Tribbett. Ty Tribbett stormed into gospel music with a force that was impossible to ignore. Known for his electrifying stage presence and genre-bending sound, the Camden, New Jersey native led Ty Tribbett and G.A. to fame with songs like Victory and Everything Will Be All Right. With high-octane energy and raw vulnerability, he quickly became a beacon for a new generation of worshipers craving authenticity over tradition. However, in 2009, his personal life imploded in public view. After publicly promoting faithfulness and marriage, it was revealed that Tribbett had engaged in an extramarital affair with a choir member, while his wife Shantae had also been unfaithful. The news devastated fans who saw their relationship as a model Christian union. Although the couple attempted reconciliation, their marriage ended in divorce in 2014. Adding to the surprise, Tribbett remarried just 2 years later to Sherry Woods, a former background singer in his ministry. Some supporters were blindsided, questioning his transparency and spiritual leadership. In a genre that demands moral uprightness, many felt betrayed. Though he never offered a full public confession, Tribbett addressed his past obliquely in interviews and sermons, admitting failures without diving into specifics. His music, however, began to carry deeper emotional resonance. The 2017 Grammy-winning album Let Them Fall in Love marked a new chapter, less hype, more healing. He also took bold steps by performing at inclusive events like Kirk Franklin's The Exodus, which openly welcomed LGBTQ+ believers. For some, this signaled a shift in Tribbett's tone, less judgmental, more embracing. Still, not all fans approved, and conservative critics accused him of theological compromise. Ty Tribbett's story is not just one of scandal, but of transformation. He represents the evolving face of gospel, messy, flawed, yet still reaching for grace in the chaos of personal and public redemption. Vicki Winans. Vicki Winans is a name that sparks admiration and side eyes in equal measure. Born in Detroit, Michigan into a family of singers, she quickly became a staple in gospel, thanks to her comedic flair, vocal dexterity, and dramatic stage presence. With hits like Shake Yourself Loose and As Long as I Got King Jesus, Winans brought an unmistakable theatricality to the gospel world, complete with dance breaks, wigs, sequins, and unapologetic sass. But for every standing ovation she earned, she also sparked murmurs of disapproval from gospel traditionalists. Her over-the-top performances, flamboyant wardrobe, and habit of poking fun at other artists during her shows led some church elders to accuse her of turning ministry into a comedy act. One of her most infamous moments came during a live routine where she impersonated fellow gospel singers, leading to backlash from those who believed she crossed the line between humor and disrespect. Though her musical innovation was undeniable, especially when she released a club-style remix of Shake Yourself Loose, the reception was split. Some listeners embraced the fresh energy, while others questioned whether gospel should ever feel like a dance floor. Despite the controversy, the remix found success on multiple charts and introduced her to younger audiences. Her personal life also drew attention. As the ex-wife of fellow gospel legend Marvin Winans, Vicki was often placed under a microscope. When she continued using the Winans name, post-divorce critics accused her of exploiting family fame, though she insisted it was part of her brand and identity. Through it all, Winans remained fiercely authentic. She defied the mold of quiet reverence often expected of women in gospel, and instead built a brand on transparency, humor, and high-octane worship. Love her or loathe her, Vicki Winans proved that sometimes being bold for God means not fitting in with everyone at the table. Fred Hammond. Fred Hammond is widely credited with shaping the sound of modern black worship. As a founding member of Commissioned and later with Radical for Christ, Hammond's fusion of R&B, funk, and worship laid the foundation for contemporary gospel in the 1990s and 2000s. Albums like Pages of Life, Chapter 1 and 2, and Spirit of David became staples in churches nationwide, earning him multiple Stellar Awards, Dove Awards, and a Grammy. Yet despite his towering influence, Hammond faced intense criticism following the very public collapse of his marriage. In 2012, after 20 years with wife Kim Rutherford, Hammond confirmed their divorce news that stunned fans who had long seen him as a model of Christian masculinity and family values. Adding fuel to the controversy was his remarriage in 2014 to Linda Freeman, a college administrator. The timing, just 2 years after the breakup, left some questioning his sincerity and spiritual consistency. While Hammond never directly detailed the cause of his divorce, vague references to life storms in interviews only deepened speculation. Fans and critics alike accused him of evading accountability. The situation was especially tense because his discography includes love songs about Christian marriage and albums like Love Unstoppable and God, Love, and Romance, which had been widely played at weddings. His 2015 album, Worship Journal Live, attempted to address these emotional wounds, featuring raw performances that hinted at personal brokenness. Some radio stations hesitated to promote it, citing a perceived disconnect between Hammond's personal life and his musical messaging. Over time, however, Hammond re-emerged with renewed respect, mentoring younger artists like Jonathan McReynolds and appearing on high-profile gospel platforms. Still, the stain of his divorce lingered for some, especially in a genre where male leaders are held to high moral expectations. Fred Hammond remains a legend his music transcends, but his personal trials remind fans that even the giants of gospel walk through valleys. Andraé Crouch. Andraé Crouch didn't just sing about salvation, he modernized the very sound of it. Born in 1942 in San Francisco, Crouch grew up immersed in Pentecostal worship, but came of age during America's Cultural Revolution. In the late 1960s, when traditional gospel music still relied heavily on choirs and organs, Crouch exploded onto the scene with a new formula: rock guitars, jazz chords, funky bass lines, and lyrics that could inspire both churchgoers and stadium crowds. His group, The Disciples, broke molds with songs like The Blood Will Never Lose Its Power and Through It All. But not everyone cheered. Traditionalists accused him of watering down the gospel message and courting secular fame. His 1971 album, Keep On Singing, was controversial for featuring drum patterns and production quality more reminiscent of Motown than a Sunday service. By the late 70s, Crouch had crossed over completely, working with pop legends like Diana Ross, Michael Jackson, and Elton John. His contribution to the Color Purple soundtrack and Jackson's Man in the Mirror outraged purists who questioned whether a gospel artist should be involved in Hollywood projects. Some even called for boycotts. Still, Crouch remained unapologetic. He often said that he wasn't compromising the gospel, he was expanding its reach. His vision was validated when he won 7 Grammys and left an indelible imprint on both gospel and contemporary Christian music. Artists such as Kirk Franklin, Israel Houghton, and Tasha Cobbs credit him as a foundational influence. Despite the criticism, Andraé Crouch never wavered in his faith. He preached, produced, and performed until his passing in 2015. Today, churches sing his once controversial songs as if they've always been part of the canon. Crouch didn't just change gospel music, he proved that reverence and rhythm could coexist, even if it meant being hated before being hailed. Eddie Long. Bishop Eddie Long once stood as a towering figure in American gospel and ministry. As the senior pastor of New Birth Missionary Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, he oversaw a congregation that ballooned to over 25,000 members. Known for his prosperity gospel preaching and commanding presence, Long hosted global conferences, rubbed shoulders with U.S. presidents, and flew in private jets, symbols of what he claimed was divine favor. But in 2010, his empire crumbled almost overnight. 4 young men filed lawsuits accusing Long of using his spiritual authority to coerce them into sexual relationships, allegedly offering luxury trips, cash, and gifts in exchange for silence and compliance. The allegations were shocking not only because of the abuse of power, but because Long had previously preached vehemently against homosexuality. This perceived hypocrisy sparked outrage across church communities and the public. Although Bishop Long denied the claims, the cases were settled out of court, with undisclosed terms leading many to question his innocence. He never offered a clear public explanation, and the shadow of the allegations never lifted. Attendance at New Birth dwindled, and Long's once flourishing media presence diminished. His physical health declined rapidly, and he died of an aggressive cancer in 2017 at the age of 63. Despite his fall, Long still has defenders who cite his charitable efforts, spiritual guidance, and ability to lead one of the largest African-American churches in the nation. Yet for many, his legacy is permanently tainted by the unresolved nature of the scandal. Eddie Long's story is a cautionary tale about the unchecked power of religious leaders and the dangers of celebrity culture within the church. Once celebrated as a shepherd to thousands, his life ended with more questions than answers, and a legacy mired in contradiction. T.D. Jakes. Bishop T.D. Jakes is one of the most influential black religious figures of the 21st century. As the founder and senior pastor of the Potter's House in Dallas, a 30,000-member megachurch, Jakes built a global platform through fiery sermons, best-selling books like Woman, Thou Art Loosed, and faith-based films that reached box office success. His charisma and business acumen elevated him beyond the pulpit into a spiritual brand. However, with that visibility came intense scrutiny. Jakes's promotion of prosperity theology, the belief that financial blessing is a sign of divine favor, drew criticism from both within and outside religious circles. His multi-million-dollar lifestyle, complete with a 10,000-square-foot mansion, luxury vehicles, and private jet dubbed God's chariot by critics, clashed sharply with the socio-economic reality of many congregants, especially during times of financial crisis. He was further criticized for hosting high-ticket kingdom economics conferences and selling faith-based wealth-building strategies. Detractors accused him of commodifying Christianity and exploiting vulnerable believers seeking deliverance through tithes and offerings. Jakes has also faced pushback for his evolving stances on sensitive social issues. Once firmly Pentecostal in doctrine, he later took more nuanced positions on LGBTQ+ inclusion, leading conservatives to accuse him of theological compromise, while progressives found his lack of full affirmation insufficient. His political connections, ranging from George W. Bush to Kamala Harris, added to the perception of a leader walking a tightrope between faith and influence. Despite all controversies, Jakes remains a towering figure in black church culture. His sermons still pack stadiums, and his reach through media, literature, and digital platforms is unmatched. To critics, he represents the danger of blending faith with empire. To supporters, he's a visionary who made Christianity accessible to the modern world. Love him or question him, T.D. Jakes transformed the way America hears the gospel. C.C. Winans. C.C. Winans has long been considered gospel royalty. With a career spanning over 3 decades, 12 Grammy Awards, and timeless hits like Alabaster Box and Mercy Said No, she's often described as one of the most beloved voices in Christian music. Raised in the legendary Winans family of Detroit, CeCe's soft-spoken spirit, powerful vocals, and unwavering faith made her a model of gospel elegance and spiritual grace. Yet even CeCe, largely free of scandal, found herself at the center of subtle criticism from gospel traditionalists. In the 1990s, eyebrows were raised when she collaborated with her close friend Whitney Houston on Count on Me for the Waiting to Exhale soundtrack, a film celebrated for its portrayal of female empowerment, yet seen by some church leaders as too secular. Her appearance on Houston's Preacher's Wife gospel soundtrack also stirred debate as purists questioned whether her association with pop icons diluted her ministry. CeCe never flinched under this scrutiny. In interviews, she defended her choices famously saying, "Whitney loved the Lord, and music is music. If singing with her opened someone's heart to the gospel, then praise God." Her stance revealed a deeper divide in gospel, the tension between protecting the sacred and expanding its reach. Later, when she hosted the television program CeCe Winans Praise Party and served as a judge on Sunday Best, some questioned if her platform had become too entertainment-driven. Still, she maintained a clean personal record, no tabloid drama, no public feuds, and continually returned to worship-centered projects. By the 2010s, any lingering doubts were drowned out by praise for her worship albums like Believe For It and Goodness of God. CeCe Winans may have faced whispers of compromise, but her steady presence, spiritual depth, and vocal excellence ensured her legacy as a bridge between gospel tradition and modern influence, one that never needed scandal to make an impact. Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson, often hailed as the Queen of Gospel, possessed a voice that could shake walls and heal souls. With landmark recordings like Move On Up a Little Higher and How I Got Over, she brought Black spiritual music from church basements to the world's grandest stages. Born in New Orleans in 1911 and raised in deep poverty, Jackson's rise to international acclaim was nothing short of miraculous. However, her journey was far from universally praised. In the 1950s, when she became the first gospel artist to perform at New York's Carnegie Hall, some church leaders labeled her performance blasphemous, believing gospel should never be sung in secular spaces. Her collaborations with jazz and blues figures like Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington caused more controversy. To conservative audiences, gospel music belonged strictly in sacred settings, not nightclubs or jazz festivals. Even as her records topped the charts and her influence grew, Mahalia was accused of bringing the world into the church. Offers to sing secular music flooded in often with lucrative pay, but she refused each one, famously saying, "I'm singing God's music to save souls, not to entertain." Jackson's involvement in the civil rights movement also drew criticism from those who believed gospel artists should remain apolitical. But she marched with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., sang at the March on Washington in 1963, and used her earnings to support churches and civil rights causes across the country. Despite the criticism, Jackson's unwavering commitment to her calling changed gospel music forever. She sanctified spaces once considered unholy and turned gospel into a weapon for social change. While once scorned for her bold choices, she's now revered as the woman who brought heaven's sound into every room, whether the church approved or not. James Cleveland. Reverend James Cleveland was more than a gospel singer. He was its architect, known as the King of Gospel. Cleveland shaped the modern choir sound and pioneered gospel's golden era. With classics like Peace Be Still and Lord Help Me to Hold Out, he revolutionized the way Black churches worshipped, blending traditional hymns with soulful arrangements and raspy, emotive leads. He mentored icons like Aretha Franklin and founded the Gospel Music Workshop of America, which trained thousands of musicians. But behind the accolades lay a legacy marred by controversy. By the late 1980s, Cleveland faced serious allegations of financial mismanagement. The IRS launched investigations into over $4 million in unpaid taxes related to his record label, Savoy Records. Choir members and collaborators accused him of withholding royalties and exploiting volunteers for profit, while his Los Angeles-based Cornerstone Church nearly faced foreclosure. His personal life also stirred whispers, especially regarding his sexuality, an unspoken subject in the gospel world at the time. Though Cleveland never addressed these rumors publicly, his death from AIDS-related complications in 1991 fueled long-standing speculation. To some conservatives, this cast a shadow on his ministry. To others, particularly queer gospel artists, he became an unspoken symbol of the church's hidden contradictions. Despite the scandals, Cleveland's musical genius remained untouchable. His call and response arrangements, fusion of spirituals and soul, and ability to command massive choirs became the template for generations. His influence is embedded in nearly every gospel church service today. James Cleveland's story is one of immense brilliance shadowed by silence and controversy. He built a sound that moved millions while living in a world that never fully embraced all of who he was. His legacy forces the gospel world to confront the uneasy truth. Sometimes the vessel is flawed, but the message still delivers divine power. Shirley Caesar. Shirley Caesar is gospel music's living legend. A powerhouse vocalist, preacher, and cultural icon whose voice has echoed through sanctuaries for over 6 decades. From an early start with the Caravans to a commanding solo career, Caesar became known for electrifying performances of songs like Hold My Mule and No Charge. Her ability to turn a sermon into a song and a song into a sermon set her apart as both minister and messenger. Yet even a woman of her stature has not escaped controversy. In 1987, at the height of her gospel fame, Caesar made the unusual move of entering local politics. She was elected to the Durham, North Carolina City Council, a decision that baffled and upset some within her religious base. Critics questioned whether her political involvement would distract from her spiritual calling, especially when she began advocating for public policies related to education, housing, and economic equity. While her activism was rooted in faith, some gospel traditionalists believed that mixing ministry with politics blurred sacred lines. There were quiet murmurs that her time in office compromised her role as a spiritual leader. Some questioned her musical direction during this time, especially as she began releasing socially conscious tracks that addressed issues beyond the church pew. Still, Caesar remained steadfast. She often said, "If preachers don't get involved in politics, who will?" Her leadership in both realms broke barriers for Black women in the church and in public service. Today, as more pastors embrace activism, Caesar's controversial move now looks prophetic. Though the criticism never silenced her, it did reveal the challenges faced by women navigating leadership in both sacred and secular spheres. Shirley Caesar is more than a gospel singer. She's a faith leader who dared to serve her people in the pulpit and beyond, even when the church wasn't ready for it. The Clark Sisters. The Clark Sisters. Jackie Denise Elbernita. Twinkie. Dorinda and Karen didn't just sing gospel, they re-engineered it. Born to the legendary choral director Dr. Mattie Moss Clark in Detroit, the sisters brought fierce harmonies, jazz-fused chords, and blazing Pentecostal energy to the forefront of gospel music. Their 1981 crossover hit, You Brought the Sunshine, brought them mainstream visibility charting on R&B and dance stations at a time when gospel was expected to stay confined within church walls. But their innovation came at a cost. As their popularity rose, criticism from traditional church circles exploded. Pastors accused them of sounding too secular, comparing their bass lines to disco grooves and equating their sequined outfits with worldly vanity. Twinkie Clark's use of synthesizers and funk-infused arrangements on tracks like My Living in Vain and Blessed and Highly Favored were groundbreaking, but for many purists, they represented a dangerous blending of the sacred with the secular. Some churches even banned their music, fearing it would corrupt the youth. The sisters' modern fashion permed hair makeup and stage-ready glam was also a target, especially among Kojic Church of God in Christ traditionalists who expected modesty in ministry. Despite the backlash, the Clark sisters stood their ground. Their mother famously defended them, insisting that the anointing wasn't defined by sound or style, but by spiritual intent. Over time, the very innovations they were condemned for became standard in gospel. Artists like Mary Tasha Cobbs and even Kirk Franklin credit the sisters as foundational influencers. Today, You Brought the Sunshine is celebrated as a gospel classic, and their harmonies remain unmatched. The Clark sisters transformed gospel not by abandoning its roots, but by showing it could evolve without losing power. Hated by many in the beginning, they're now revered as the very heartbeat of contemporary gospel. Albertina Walker. Albertina Walker, hailed as the Queen of Gospel, was a force of soul, elegance, and spirit. Rising to fame in the 1950s as the founder of the Caravans, she mentored future stars like Shirley Caesar and Inez Andrews, while carving out her own path with thunderous vocals and a deep, commanding stage presence. Her signature songs, "Please Be Patient with Me and I Can Go to God in Prayer," became foundational to gospel worship services across America. Yet despite her revered status, Walker faced recurring criticism from some in the gospel world, who believed her style strayed too close to theatricality. She often delivered her performances with tearful crescendos, sweeping hand gestures, and shimmering gowns that some church leaders considered too flamboyant. Her tendency to step away from the microphone and belt unamplified high notes was seen by critics as grandstanding, a move more fit for showbiz than sanctified spaces. Walker also drew ire for occasionally performing in secular venues like the Regal Theater in Chicago, sharing lineups with jazz and blues acts. To conservative gospel fans, this crossed a line. They argued gospel should never share space with worldly entertainment, and even questioned her motives. Was it worship or applause she was after? But Walker never apologized for her expression. "If David could dance before the Lord with all his might, why can't I sing with all of mine?" she once declared. Her passion, she insisted, came not from ego, but from deep, unshakable faith. By the 1980s and 90s, the criticisms faded as her influence became indisputable. She received multiple awards, performed for presidents, and remained a bridge between traditional gospel and its modern expressions. Albertina Walker's legacy is clear. She didn't just lead gospel music, she lived it out loud with every note, every tear, and every robe glittering with conviction. So now we ask, were these gospel legends truly hated for their flaws? Or were they simply bold enough to challenge tradition, from blazing new musical paths to living out messy human faith in public? Each of these icons left behind more than controversy, they left impact. Whether you admire their courage or question their choices, one thing is certain: they reshaped gospel forever. Do you believe gospel should evolve with culture or stay rooted in the old ways? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence for more powerful stories.